I'm Amy. Thank you for tuning in. Today I'm joined by a fellow vampire author, Margie Fuston. And Margie has written a book that has just come out in the United States called A Vampire's Hearts and Other Dead Things, and it's just on the shelf there behind me. I'm halfway through reading it and it's absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much for joining us, Margie.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's really great. The second I read the blurb of this book, I thought I knew I'm going to love it, and I do so far. And I'm already coming up with all kinds of theories about it. So this video is going to be part of a convention that I'm putting on with some UK authors called Killer YA Con. So over Halloween, we are going to be talking about all kinds of spooky things with fantastic authors like Margie. So we are covering the vampire portion of the spooky Halloween. So I hope that's okay. Like a lot to cover in this one chat, but I'm sure we'll get there. So, okay. So so go on to the first question. Can you tell us a little bit about your fantastic debut book?
Yeah, so Vampire's Hearts and Other Dead Things is, it's about a girl whose dad is dying from pancreatic cancer, and she just cannot accept that there's nothing left that she can do. So she decides that she's going to go to New Orleans in search of a vampire. So it's a world where vampires maybe exist. They actually came out and said, hey, we're here like 10 years prior to where the story starts, and then they disappeared again. So a lot of people think it was the whole big hoax, but my main character Victoria and her dad, they're like wholehearted believers in vampires, and they had planned this trip after she graduated high school to go to New Orleans, and she decides to take the trip herself in this last ditch effort to save her dad.
It's such a good premise. It's like it's got that exciting vampire thing, but also the really chilling kind of human angle of it. So I'm interested in, obviously you decided that people know vampires are real, or are they? And you've created your own version of the vampire myth. So I was interested, how did you go about doing that?
I just started out doing so much research because I was like, okay, I have this character and I need her to go somewhere to search for vampires. So it was like, where is she going to go? Like, there were a lot of places that I thought about in Europe, but for the story, I was like, I'm not sure she would go that far. It needs to be somewhere closer. So once I started thinking about where can she go within the US, New Orleans, like far and away, was like the choice that I had to make. And also I wanted a setting that would challenge her desire not to feel anything. So for a lot of the story, she's trying not to feel things. She's trying not to feel her grief. She's trying not to feel any kind of joy or happiness because she feels like that's a betrayal while her dad is dying. She doesn't want to enjoy this trip. So I needed like an actual setting that would challenge her desire not to feel. And New Orleans is a place that I don't think you can go there and not feel something. Like that is a city that's just so full of life that I was like, yeah, this is where she has to be for this story.
It is perfect. And I think I came to the same conclusion as to why I would set mine in New Orleans, because I knew I wanted to make the Interview with the Vampire references, and I just wanted it to be somewhere where that line between kind of mythology and reality feels really blurred. And I don't know whether you found when you were there, but I was really interested that people say things like that they'd sat on a trolley car like next to a ghost, or their neighbor like hears a ghost all the time. And it's kind of part of the everyday, like, I don't know, just the everyday life. And where I live is the total opposite of that. So I could not set a vampire story in South Yorkshire. Maybe like Whitby and the kind of, the Dracula thing would work, but yeah, it had to be across across the ocean for mine too. So I think we talked a little bit before how there's different things you can do with a vampire story. Like, I think my vampires are a little bit more, I don't know, it's sort of kind of frivolous murder mystery, like romp type book, where I don't think I consider too many things that are that serious. I think there's certain family relationships and stuff that are, but the vampire side is not really. And I was really interested, and I love the idea that you used vampires to deal with, like you said, with grief and mortality. So can you tell us anything more about that, like what that decision making was like and how you incorporated that into the book?
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I love vampires so much, is that they can be just like, they can be so many different things in so many different books. And like, I love every like different like iteration of them. Like, I love when they're it's like fun and campy and like the like classic horror mixed with a little bit of humor. Like, that's exactly my cup of tea. And I love that you can kind of use them to like dig into also like different themes. Like, for me, I was kind of exploring like, what does it mean to be alive, and is there a difference between like just existing and like truly living and experiencing life? And that's something that um, I think with vampires you can kind of explore. Like, are they actually still alive? Are they enjoying living forever, or does that make you just exist and not actually live? And that's kind of what Victoria is doing. She's trying to just exist. And then this vampire boy, Nicholas, is trying to challenge her and say, okay, but you can't just exist, especially if you're going to live forever. You have to have a lot of joy in life right now to kind of sustain that for eternity. So he's kind of challenging her to prove herself in that way and bring out that side of her that she's really, really trying to suppress. So I just had a lot of fun with taking vampires, and also I wanted vampires to represent something different. Like, you often think of them and think of like death and like darkness. And so for Victoria, they represent hope and life. And so that's something that she's clinging to, is are these vampires myths and legends, because they're representing hope to her.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I'm halfway through, so I'm still at that point where I'm working out where it's going to go. But you've done it so well. Like, the grief is just palpable at the beginning of the book, and then she goes, and there's just the shift as she goes to New Orleans, and she, like you said, she's wrestling with herself. I just think you've done it beautifully, and I'm really excited about the bit you're describing is what I'm just getting towards in the book. So I'm really looking forward to see how Nicholas is going to push her boundaries. And yeah, I can't wait to see how it's going to end, because it's one of those books where I don't know what you're going to do, and I love that. So yeah, thank you. You've really, really, really gripped me. So I'm just checking my list of questions. So the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is the New Orleans setting. I know that we both love it and we've been there. So how did you manage to capture it? Because I literally, as I was reading it, it just took me right back there, like the heat that clings to your skin, and the balconies hanging overhead with all that gorgeous greenery, and just the feel of the place and the people. Like, how did you manage to evoke that in your writing?
I actually was lucky enough that I could go there, because when I first had this idea and I was like, okay, I have to set it in New Orleans, that's the only choice I can make. I had never been to New Orleans. So I actually like messaged some friends. I was like, anyone want to go to New Orleans? And like, some of them kind of just laughed and was like, okay, Margie, just being Margie. It's a wild idea. But one of my friends was like, yeah. And so later when I saw her in person, I was like, I was serious if you were serious. And so we ended up going like just a few months later, and I just fell in love with the city once I got there. And when I went, I had no plot. I had nothing. All I had in my mind was Victoria, the character, and this like desperate task. I had no idea how any of it would unfold. And so really, when I was there, it was just, the plot was just kind of clicking right into place. So a lot of the places that Victoria goes in New Orleans are places that I went as well. And so I was just like, okay, this scene is happening here. I need to get these details. So it was a trip where I was totally focused on, this is the setting of my book. I need to pay close attention to how everything feels to me.
Yeah.
So I tried to get as much of the experience that she could, by just walking around and going where I thought she would go within reason.
Yeah. I was just thinking there's maybe a couple of things you might not want to do that she doesn't.
Yeah, she breaks into some places, and I did not. I obeyed the laws.
Good to know.
But it was so much fun. So
I think you can tell that reading the book, because it is just such an immersion in the sensory experience of being in New Orleans. And I had the opposite, where I went there in 2012, decided I think in 2016 that I was going to write this book. So it'd been 4 years, and I kind of had to troll through my video footage and my photographs and like watch loads of YouTube videos just to really get myself into that feel of the city. So yeah, it's really great that you were able to go with that in mind. I bet that was really useful.
Yeah, I was really lucky that worked out, and I could experience the plot at the same time I was experiencing the city. So, because Victoria's never been before, so she was kind of having the same experience that I was having, which just made it so much easier to capture that on the page. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it as I said, it worked. So it was great.
Thank you.
So the other thing that I wanted to touch about, kind of linked to what you've already said, is what your writing process looks like. So you mentioned how you had the idea and then went to the city to do the research. So what happened after that when you'd got all these ideas?
So once I got back, I kind of made this very loose outline, because I already kind of knew, okay, we're going to have a scene here on a swamp tour. We're going to have a scene at the Ursuline convent. We're going to have the scene at this restaurant with the thin fried catfish that I love so much. So then it was just a matter of what order I needed to put these scenes in. So I kind of went through and just had a very loose plot, like Victoria goes here, then she goes here, then she goes here, and then she goes here. And then I actually drafted that book in 1 month.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
Yeah. So it was only a 50,000 word draft, but I don't know if I'll ever have that experience again where a book just like came. I mean, it was both an easy book to write and not an easy book to write. Like writing wise and craft wise, it was the easiest book for me to write. Emotionally, it was a hard book to write because it does dig so deeply into a very specific kind of grief. So that made it difficult to write. But what's interesting is looking back at my first draft and the published version, it actually has all the same chapters and scenes as my very first draft, except for one added chapter. So I think that's interesting, just how I will never replicate this again, but it just kind of flowed.
Do you think it's
the way
different?
That it was supposed to be?
So why did you write it? Because you were thinking that you were going to try and get an agent and get published? Like, was that the plan when you wrote it?
Yeah, that was the plan. And I actually did pitch wars with it.
Oh, cool.
Which is why I was drafting it so fast, because it was 1 month until the pitch wars deadline, and I decided last minute I was going to do it, so I drafted it super fast.
I did a similar thing. I didn't draft it fast, but I'd been working on it about a year, and then found out about this mentoring program called Write Mentor. Hadn't finished writing it. You were meant to finish writing it before you entered your book, and I just kind of did it anyway, and then had to really frantically write the ending because I got a place on it. So I think there's nothing like a really unrealistic deadline, is that, for kind of motivating you.
Yeah, it helps.
So do you think, has it changed the writing experience for you now, knowing that you have an audience and knowing that you are writing for publication, compared with that first draft?
Yeah, I would say that I know people talk about the second book syndrome and how you can get in your head. And I actually wrote what's going to be my second book before I wrote Vampires, Hearts, and Other Dead Things. So I mean, I went back and revised it, of course, and totally reshaped the world and the plot and everything. But I did write the first draft beforehand, so I was like, I'm going to escape the second book. No.
So did it just skip to book 3 for you?
No, I'm still working on the second book.
Oh, okay.
So I'm actually doing revisions on it right now with my editor. So, but I definitely have found that now I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope readers still like this second book who liked the first one. And so, because it is a little bit different, it still has vampires. But like Vampires, Hearts, and Other Dead Things kind of reads more like a contemporary novel with vampires, whereas my second book is full on contemporary fantasy with vampires. Cool. So there's just a lot more world building, a lot more action, a lot more blood, which is all fun for vampires. So
I feel like if you're a vampire fan, like you said, you kind of love, well, I certainly do, like all the different incarnations, like from the kind of stylized True Blood vampire to the like 30 Days of Night, really bloody, kind of more animalistic. So I don't know, I think vampire fans are quite like varied in their taste. So taste, sorry, I always have some vampire puns in there accidentally. I'll start calling you fantastic or something next. I get a lot of those in reviews. Yeah, I do. I think that I'm already invested. When you said like more vampires and more gore, I'm like, yeah, I'll read that.
Yeah, I feel like if you like vampires, you're willing to pick up any kind of vampire. I mean, that's how I am. Same thing. Like, love any kind.
So that feeds in beautifully to the next question I'd planned, which is, why do people keep writing vampire books, or why do you? Like, because I know that when I got my agent, The Beautiful had just been announced, and I was like, oh man, a New Orleans vampire book. And then I got a bit further on and your book was announced, and I was like, oh man, another New Orleans vampire book. And actually, you probably couldn't find 3 more different books, I don't think, apart from the fact that New Orleans and vampires are in it, and there are some central similarities. Why do we keep getting drawn to vampires and doing our own fresh takes on them? What do you think it is?
I think it's because of that very reason that you can do 3 vampire books set in New Orleans and they're all going to be completely different. Like, you're not going to be like, oh my goodness, another book with vampires in New Orleans, like too similar. Like, but they're not similar at all. And I think that's why vampires to me are so interesting, because I can come up with, a totally different world surrounding vampires and create a totally different, mythology around them, and dive into different aspects of them. And I just think that they're so versatile. They're just a very versatile, like, monster that you can play with and make them truly monstrous, or make them misunderstood, or just make them, not a monster at all. There's just so many different things you could do. And I think that's why I've always loved vampires and why I'm writing them now, because it is like the same thing in that they're vampires, but it's also, you can do incredibly different things with each book. Like, write a very emotional, contemporary feeling book and then write something that's an emotional bloodfest.
Just kind of write I think mine, I sort of went for the kind of slasher feel, I think. And then you, like you said, you can delve into the mortality and humanity side of it. And I think it's really interesting that vampires look human as well. And I think that that's what draws me to them in some ways, that I don't know, a werewolf, when they are a werewolf, it's sort of a very clear, like, they are that thing, and they're driven by the hunger and the kind of violence inside them. But I think vampires, because they've got that blurred line between humanity, like how human are they, and like when you think of like the vampires in Buffy, which I know that you appreciate based on the references in the book, I just think those vampires fascinating, that, you know, do they have a soul, do they not have a soul, is the sort of central question. And, you know, does having a soul as a vampire make any difference? And yeah, I love that. I just think that there's so much room in that morally grey space of like the Spikes and the Damons from from Vampire Diaries, and Lestat from Interview the Vampire. Like, are they pure evil, or are they like a lovely love interest for the teenage girl, like, you know, or everything in between? So in terms of Buffy then, would you say that is one of your favorites like versions of vampires, or are there any others that you really love?
I love Buffy, and I think I had more Buffy quotes than maybe anything in the book. I mean, my first line references Buffy, so so Buffy's a favorite. Also, the Vampire Diaries, I would like to forget some of the last seasons, but the Vampire Diaries is still a favorite of mine, because I love Damon. You mentioned Damon and Spike, and they're a couple of my favorites. Because I love the "Am I a villain or am I not" kind of line. That they teeter on. Like, in both cases, they had them do a couple things that I wish they hadn't, you know? So because they both kind of crossed the line a little further than I like for my love interest, but still, I just love those type of characters. So those two are definitely a couple of my favorites. And Eric from True Blood is another one.
And I think
that kind of fits.
I think
that.
Lost Boys as well is another one for me that I really love. Lost Boys. I think Have you referenced that? So I think you did earlier.
Yes, I did. I did have a Lost Boys reference. So.
I absolutely love vampire references, and I'm glad you mentioned the quotes, because I didn't want to spoil that for people, but I really like the fact that there are quotes from different vampire TV shows, films, and things. I just thought it was really, really clever at the beginning of each chapter. It gives you a real like sense of what the chapter might be about. Being a big Buffy fan, if you see a quote from a certain episode, you think, oh no, you know, for characters, like, what are they in for? I'm enjoying picking out all the references, and I think books like that, you can read it again and kind of get new things out of it. So I really, that's one of the things that I'm enjoying the most probably in the book.
Oh, thank you. I had so much fun doing those quotes, because obviously I had to watch a lot of movies.
Oh, what a shame. This is research, you know. I'm watching vampire films today.
I'm working. I have to watch 12 hours of vampire movies. Please don't disturb me.
Brilliant. Yeah, no. I because I'm now writing the second Mina book, I'm having the problem that I put loads of my favorite stuff in the first book, so I'm having to dig a little deeper for the second one, and it's fun because I'm realizing some of the stuff, like, how did I forget certain favorite things? So it's great to get back into that and start trying to dig for those pop culture references all over again. I just love it.
Awesome.
We've talked a little bit about your publication journey. So you did Pitch Wars. Was that how you ended up getting your agent?
Yes, I did end up with my agent from Pitch Wars. So we did the agent showcase round, where agents go on and request full manuscripts. And my agent had put in a request, and she said something along the lines of, I feel like this is going to make me laugh and cry. She left some comment, and I was like, oh, that's going to be my agent. And sure enough, she emailed me, I think like 5 days later after the showcase, and set up a call. So I got really, really lucky that I could sign with my agent right after the agent showcase. So I really didn't have to query with the book. It happened so fast that I had only just sent out the requests that I got from Pitch Wars. And my agent loves my "Can I Add a Vampire to This?" which is, we joke, is kind of my brand. Like, take a story, can you add a vampire? if you can do it.
I love that. Keep doing that just forever.
And so, yeah, that's my plan. So then it sold. I think it sold 6 months later.
Cool. And then and it came out. How long was the difference between like signing your contract to?
So it sold it sold the end of August of 2019. So it took 2 years to the day to come out. Yeah.
Mine sold at the same time. Mine also sold end of August 2019 and then came out in April this year. So I wasn't quite 2 years, but I was like pushing it.
Yeah, it takes so long, doesn't it?
It really does. And I think that's good in a way. I think with COVID, especially, like we were probably quite lucky. I mean, bookshops were still shut when my book came out, so I didn't get to go and see it in a bookshop until quite some time after. Well, yeah, I mean, how's that impacted on your writing experience, do you think, the sort of debut author during COVID?
Yeah, it's it's an obvious bummer. Like you kind of wish that you could go out, and like originally, I was gonna do an event with a local friend, and then it was like, well, never mind. we're still not doing things. So that's of course a bummer, but it is what it is. And luckily there are things you could do now online and stuff that are fun like this.
Yeah, so, exactly. I mean, I ended up with an online launch, which I set up with an author friend, and I think it just forced us to be a bit more creative and to think, well, I was hoping to go down to London and do a launch at Waterstones or something, but what can we do instead? And I think I started doing YouTube basically because of that, and thought, well, if I can't interview author friends in person, I'm going to do it online. So so there have been ways, and I think the online response from readers, because I haven't actually met any readers face to face apart from people I already know, and like booksellers who, when I've gone in to sign books, have read it. I haven't had that experience of having a signing queue, obviously. So the online response is has been really special, because that's kind of all we get at the moment, isn't it?
Right. Yes. I love getting tagged in Instagram posts, because it's like, that's my, interaction.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how I know if my book is selling to somebody. So.
And if you're tagged, you kind of hope it's something good as well. It's usually the case.
Yes. So far, I've been blessed with not being tagged in bad things.
I got tagged in wrong. I think somebody thought what they said was really constructive and helpful, and tagged me in it. And actually, as the author, you maybe don't need to see something constructive. You just need somebody to tell you that they love you. So I don't know. It's a difficult thing, isn't it? Because I do review books and I try and do it honestly, but I also have the mindset that if I really didn't like something, I just personally wouldn't review it. But I know that some people do want to be critical, so I just try and stay clear of that, because you just don't need to see it to be able to write anything else again.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm not on Goodreads or anything. I was before my book came out, but then I was like, okay, now it's time to leave.
I'm still using it as a reader and just trying not to look at my book on there, but the temptation is so real. Like I find myself start typing the title and go, no, don't do that. It's fine. I can live without knowing. And people send me, nice stuff, so I'll just keep using the ones I get tagged in.
I had to stop. I had to stop using it at all, because the temptation was too great, and I did not have the self-control.
And I think
not go look.
Exactly.
And I was like, you need to stop.
I think people review in different ways, don't they? And some people do want to tell you everything that they didn't like in a book, and whereas some people try and find the positive side. And as an author, you just don't know what you're going to get until you get on there. So it's best to not.
Yes. Yeah. It's best to just not look.
So my last question, I wanted to know what you're working on now. So you've already mentioned, are you currently editing your second book, the second vampire one?
Yeah, so my second book is called Cruel Illusions,
Ooh,
and
okay.
it's actually, yeah, it's actually comped as Buffy meets Caraval.
Ooh, wow, that's a
So
good, wow, that's
thanks.
really good.
I was so in love with the comps.
Yeah.
And it's got stage magic. It's got vampire hunting stage magicians.
Wow.
So I somehow, and it's got like a deadly magical competition. So I somehow managed to put like vampires, a competition, stage and street magic, like my absolute favorite things.
That's awesome.
Somehow I managed to fit that into one book, and I'm super excited about it. Yeah, I definitely like dive really deep into the vampire world in
I,
this one.
I think
So
that's what sometimes makes the best books, because if you put in everything that you love and all that passion kind of comes across, doesn't it? So it sounds brilliant anyway.
yeah,
Is that with the
thank
same,
you.
is that with the same publisher?
It is, yeah, yeah.
Great. So do you know when that will come out yet?
It should be September 2022
Oh, the same as
is
mine.
what I've heard. It is? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. That's
So
awesome.
maybe we need to do something again together then, and we can talk about how it feels. Somebody called
We
it a
should.
sophomore novel, and I was like, that's actually a good word for it. We
Yeah.
could do our like sophomore, how it feels to be not a debut author anymore talk next September.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
Deal. Great. So I didn't prepare you for this question, so if you don't have an answer, it's fine. But is there anything that you've read or watched recently that you think fans of your book might appreciate?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I've actually like haven't, because I was like so deep in like the vampire, my own vampires, and like I had to watch so many vampire movies and stuff to do the quotes that I kind of took a little hiatus from vampires. So I'm like, I have a stack of vampire books that I'm planning to read um, the fall. I'm declaring fall like my vampire reading month.
Excellent.
So
There's actually there's a challenge
so
on YouTube called Vampirathon, which I think started as a vampire reading challenge. So you could do that and just try
what?
and yeah. And I think
Really?
now they read other stuff, but you could probably, I think there's a bingo board, and you could sorry, I've just set off a toy in my room. I'm gonna have to show you her now, aren't I? I have a Boo doll which I moved out of the way because she wasn't very Halloweeny.
Oh.
So Boo just started talking. I've just like outed myself as a big Disney fan there. So yeah, I totally forgot what I was saying because Boo's just completely distracted me. Oh yeah, so Vampirathon, there's a bingo card where you do different challenges, and it's things like a book to sink your teeth into. So it could be a vampire book if you wanted. So yeah, that might be fun to join in with.
Oh, okay. That sounds cool. Yeah, I'm gonna read a ton of vampire books this fall is my plan, because I was kind of just, you know, focusing on my own vampires so much that I was like, I can't have other vampires in my head right now. I need to do these guys. So I'm planning to make up for that. Like I've got your book, I've got
Yeah.
Beautiful, which I think I don't know if there's 3 of that series out yet.
I think there's at least 2, definitely. I haven't managed to get to the second book in the series for similar reasons.
Third one might be coming. And then The Lost Girls that just recently came out. I'm excited for that one. I think it's actually in my mailbox right now.
All right.
So
I've ordered that one. Mine copy hasn't arrived yet.
Yeah, I just got a notification that it's here. So yeah, so I've got a heavy stack of vampire reads that I'm planning to catch up on.
Excellent. That sounds like a great use of your autumnal reading time.
I think so. I think vampires are perfect for autumn.
Yeah, and that is, sales pitch from both of us. You should be reading vampire books right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I think that's a nice place to end. Vampire books are awesome. So as I mentioned, this is part of the Killer YA series. So if you want to watch more events, you can check that out on my YouTube channel. And there'll also be live events on the UK YA Books Instagram page. So you can look out for those. So thank you so much, Margie, for joining us. I've loved talking to you about vampires, as I knew I would.
Thank you so much for having me.
Loved it. So thank you everyone for watching, and thank you for continuing to support my channel, and I hope you will continue to watch more of our Halloween content. Thank you. Bye.